Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I am Kaylee Batesman, the Managing Director, Community and Partnerships at SheCanCode, and today we are discussing building bridges with data. I've got the amazing Dr. Janette Müller-Lehmann from SoundCloud with me today. She's here to discuss her journey as a trailblazing data engineer, life in general, and finding harmony in the chaos. Welcome, Janette. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, thanks so much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and have a chat on spilling the tea. Can we kick off with a bit of background about you? Did you fall into tech? How did you land at SoundCloud? A bit about you to set the scene for our listeners, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. So I was always more a mathematical programming person. I had my first computer already in the 90s, and I loved to kind of hack my way through it. I was never good in languages, only in programming languages. That's how I always say. So it was quite clear for me after graduation that I want to study computer science. And also back then there was not this huge variety of possibilities to study computers. So I moved to Berlin, studied computer science, and then came on this new field, data. Starting with Wikipedia, already at the university, we had kind of small research group doing analysis around Wikipedia, how the communities work there, how articles are structured and linked together. It was quite exciting. Long time ago, we didn't have the right infrastructure. So we were really relying on like our local computers, for instance, to computer networks. It took us days. We pushed a button, waited 48 hours to get results.
Wow.
After I graduated, then actually kind of my first mentor, Claudia, who was also leading the research group, told me I should continue researching or do something in this way. So she connected me with a research institute in Turin in Italy, because I also wanted to go abroad and improve my natural language skills. In theory, it was about improving my English skills, but I ended up in Italy, and I also love Italy a lot. And there I worked as a researcher for 1 year, more also on the social science. It was very interesting because there are most of them worked on complex networks, which relates it again to Wikipedia, which is also a complex network. But they also looked at already influencers in social networks. So Twitter was back then already starting to be a thing. And also this was very exciting. My boss there then kind of, I would say, kicked me out of his institute by telling me you should do a PhD. But I will connect you to another person who can do that with you. So that's how I ended up in Barcelona doing my PhD with Yahoo Research, but connected with the university there. Studying then Yahoo networks or Yahoo, but also in general network or internet traffic and how users engage with certain websites. Apps were not the thing back then. Not big enough back then. So I really looked how users navigate through the internet via the Yahoo browser, how much they engage with certain website, how it differs. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, you've had quite the career so far. I was interested, a lot of your where you've worked and what you've studied, it's all very STEM based, and you started with maths, and you really enjoyed maths. Was it just something about maths? People tend to say they're maths or words. Was there something about that when you were younger, a teacher or someone that kind of said maybe STEM subjects might be good for you to move into?
It was based on also my interest. I loved numbers always more. And I always had problems to put language, to understand language, because it cannot be written in math. So even early on at high school, I was already interested in math and working with numbers. And I wasn't even sure, should I study computer science or math? But then I just checked, okay, what kind of possibilities do I have? What kind of work life could I have with math versus computer science? And then somehow computer science excited me more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good to hear that you were excited by the subject. But yeah, we tend to find that people tend to think numbers or words or one or the other, and that very logical with maths. And lots of people prefer that. Um, so I mean, obviously, you've described it there that you've had an incredible career trajectory already so far. So from studying Wikipedia's social networks to leading data teams at SoundCloud, which you do now. And what inspired your transition from academia to the tech industry, and how did those early experiences shape your approach to data engineering?
Yeah, so when I finished my PhD, I wasn't sure, should I stay in research academia? Should I try out kind of first time in my life industry work? I worked as in industry before during university, but it was different. And I was really going back and forth. Back then, I already had my now husband. We had a distance relationship. So it was clear after the PhD, we want to move together. And the question was where? Research or academia in Germany is quite challenging, even to find a permanent position. So I was okay, if I would do research, I wouldn't need to travel a lot, or we would need maybe relocate to the US. And I also wanted to go back to Berlin, to my home. So it was a back and forth, and I was really challenged with the decision. And then at a certain point, okay, I will just try it out. I go to industry. I will search for a job. If it doesn't work out, I can always go back somehow.
Yeah.
So I moved back to Berlin, took some time, half a year off, and then I just kind of reactivated actually my academia network that I had to search for companies also that fit to me. Of course, it's kind of, you can not always find a job in a bank, but working in a bank, from what I've heard, and a lot of people working in a bank told me it can be quite boring. So
Yes.
there was like, I would like to have exciting data to work with. And I was also searching for a company that is social and where people enjoy working. And then kind of various people recommended SoundCloud, and that's how I applied and got my first job
Yeah.
with
I love
over
that you
30
said
years.
Gosh, I love that you said exciting data to work with, because you're so right. We have ladies in our community who work in data, but said there was that myth when they came into the industry that they thought it was all going to be data's very dry and data's very boring, and it's finding the right company and finding something that you really love, because there is that misconception in data that it's all very boring.
Not. I've
Finding
worked
the
with so
right
many,
company.
yeah, I've worked with various data sets, and somehow I find them always exciting, but it's also, I'm interested in like solving puzzles,
Yeah.
and data are always like puzzles. And for me, SoundCloud was also a good fit because of the size of the data. I know also a lot of data analysts, data scientists working in smaller companies, and then it would be boring for me because you don't have the challenge of how to iterate on big data.
Yeah.
And SoundCloud has huge volumes of data, which is exciting, but it's still small enough to make a difference in the short term. Working in bigger companies, I worked for Yahoo, I mean, it was also a research area. We were never really connected to the business, and it was also more difficult to bring things moving and bringing a change because there's more bureaucracy, more teams, more everything.
Yeah, and that makes such a difference to your day, not being a part of that and feeling like you're really making an impact internally. Definitely. And on that data note, you're passionate about increasing data literacy across organizations. So what does that actually mean to you? And what strategies have you found most effective for fostering it in a company as dynamic as SoundCloud?
Yeah. So in general, so also at SoundCloud, I'm there now since over 9 years. And I started as what we call IC, individual contributor. So first as an analyst, then a scientist. Then at a certain point, I moved to become a manager. But then I also kind of regretted this decision. So I'm back as an IC, but a leader. So I'm not leading teams. I'm helping teams to empower data. So I do not have a team under me. but I also have resources through the org that I'm in, and I'm connecting the dots, kind of. And what I've seen that for me, kind of data literacy means people have to understand the data all over the place, no matter whether it's business, product, marketing, an engineer. Everyone should understand the data that they are, no matter the company even we are in. Even I think in a bank, you need to understand the numbers, which for me are data.
Yeah.
And then on the different levels, you need to be able to use the data with different tools that a data org, for instance, has to provide. And in smaller companies, it might just be a sheet and you pull some statistics out of it. In bigger companies, you go bigger. For me, for instance, when I look at the data org, we have different levels of data, very raw, aggregated, and then all kind of already business ready. And in all these layers, people have to understand the data. There's data literacy everywhere. Yeah, how do I achieve it? I was thinking about this.
That's a loaded question. I mean, to have all of that data, so I mean, people outside of your department can understand what is happening. That must be quite a challenge.
Yeah, so what I thought about this question, and what came into my mind initially was actually a shared terminology around data, and also shared definitions. And this starts with like high-level KPIs, performance KPIs. We need to all understand what they mean or how they are defined. And they should be also measured all in the same way. So we had a couple of years ago a big problem that, for instance, the number of plays or streams, or let's say monthly active users that we have on our platform was measured differently and understood differently throughout the company. And then everyone was like, why do we have a different number than I do? Can we trust the numbers? What has happened? So first an alignment, and here across the whole company around what data mean. And another thing I experienced back then, because of this not alignment, people need to have trust in data. We had an episode, and we still have in certain units, where people don't trust the data because of misalignment. Things don't make sense. And a couple of years ago, we even ended up with a situation where, oh, I don't trust the data that this pipeline produces, so I'm yet producing another pipeline, starting from scratch. And then we got another pipeline, and then everything didn't match up, and everyone was like, I have no trust in anything. If you don't trust the data, you can also not make decisions based on data. And that's when things got very wrong. For me, how to achieve trust in data is looking at, again, shared terminology, how we measure things through data, but also having single sources of truth. We have big company, big data, and we have also various sources to measure things. We have backend events, front-end events, we have production databases, and depending on which data source you plug in, you also get a different number. So we started to define sources of truth for data that you should rely on measuring something. Another thing I would say is important is also data quality. So even when you measure or compute something, ensure that what you do is right and the underlying source is correct.
Yeah, because you're quite a big advocate, aren't you, on just making things simple, just simplicity in your work. And that must be such a challenge in data. Like you said, it must be quite easy for people to lose trust in data very quickly if it's very complex and doesn't align. I suppose that's kind of your thing. You just go in and you think, you know what, we could just make this a lot more simple, and this is how we're going to do it. That must be quite satisfying as well.
Yeah, I really, it's again like solving a puzzle.
Yeah.
Looking at, I've seen so many complex data jobs or ETLs and pipelines. I was like, what are they doing? I don't understand what they're doing. So I'm going really deep, speaking with the consumers of the data. What do you think this pipeline should do? And then step by step, I'm coming up with simpler solutions. It's also an iterative process. But then I'm always very satisfied when suddenly, 2,000 lines of code turn into 50 lines of code and doing almost the same thing, but you actually understand what it's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the main thing. I think that's another myth in tech as well, that everything is very complicated, and when you work in tech, it can be quite intimidating for people coming in thinking, am I going to know everything? And actually a lot of it is your job to communicate things to other people on your team, making things as simple as possible, because there is a misconception of being in the tech industry sometimes, that everything is you have to be highly technical, and even, you know, working with the tech team can be very complicated at times, very confusing. But if you've got people like yourselves who are there to kind of translate all of that, and to simplify for everybody, then that makes sense.
Yeah, related to simplification, what I've observed in the past, that data engineers, data analysts, we all try to plug in too many requirements into a data product, what I call. Whereas now I'm taking the approach, okay, what are the key findings we want to always find in a data pipeline or a data product, and everything else you can query once needed through in the raw data. And this helps to keep the product itself simple and reliable.
Yes, instead of always overcomplicating. Or some things are we say here, sometimes we do things and we build on things and build on things, and it is almost like expanding and renovating a house, where you think, you know what, I've gone so far and nothing really makes sense anymore because we've bolted on bits and nothing makes sense, so we just need to scale everything back to the original build and what that looked like. And you are renovating as well. So I wanted to ask you a bit about you have a demanding career, family life, and you're renovating a house as well, which sounds like just a monumental task that you're undergoing. But how do you approach time management, and what advice would you give to others juggling similar responsibilities?
I compare my private life very often with my work life. It's all about time management and prioritization. And it's always there's more work you can do. That's how we approach the renovation. Certain things are already lasting since 5 years. We are almost done there, but we all say, okay, we can put more time and effort in getting it done earlier.
Yeah.
But then we would be so stressed, or something else would fall apart. Let's do it step by step, as long as we feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, we always try to balance between having enough time for our family, having enough time for this house, and for our work.
Yeah, and making sure you do it in the right order as well, especially renovating. You are right, you can rush, but sometimes you think, oh gosh, I've done that in the wrong order, and now we're having to go back over things, or I didn't think that through, or you're right, it is time management and juggling that balance of getting things right and not rushing through.
Yeah. I even use Jira now for managing the renovations.
Yeah, you know what? I bet the skills that you learn from your private life as well really do transition into your work life, from renovating a house, and project managing that, and having to deal with all of the people that come through your house, and juggling the tradesmen and the deliveries, and all of those things must really help with your work life.
It is like work. You have
Yeah.
different departments having different expertises. You need to connect them, ensure everything is done in the right order.
Yeah, yeah, and still finding time for family as well. It is a lot to juggle. What about beyond the technical aspects? Have you spoken about the importance of clear communication already, as stakeholder alignment, which is a big thing, as well in tech companies or any companies. But how do you build trust and clarity when collaborating across teams, with diverse levels of technical expertise?
So when I'm getting assigned to a new project, I try to meet all the stakeholders or even participants to understand their roles even in this process, I might even just figure out what my role will be.
Yeah.
Capabilities, skill set, to then make a decision, okay, what makes sense and how can I fit in there? And do we need other skills that are not present yet? This helps a lot. And I'm also trying kind of building bridges, matches perfectly. I'm also, when I'm like assigned to an existing team, first understanding what they're doing and why are things done this way. So I'm not driving in there, we need to change everything, because certain things are done for a reason. Certain things are done because maybe, again, things were too complex and we just add things on top of it. And then we can simplify. And I think my specialty is then to dive very deep into the topic from also various angles, compliance, the technique, terminology. I'm currently working on our content catalog. And then, but also moving or zooming out again and trying to abstract everything on a higher level, which then helps again to speak to the upper management and try to make them understand what works, what doesn't work, and why not.
Yeah. Yes,
I,
especially with terminology. Yes. Trying to communicate that with upper management must be quite a skill because you understand, but you must also have certain jargon that you use within your departments that needs to also cross over to other teams and departments, and that must be that sounds very challenging.
yeah, I like to work with visualizations or drawings or analogies, that on a very high level, on a very simplistic level. Or if I find an issue and it's so complex, I'm also trying to visualize it through an example and say, look, when the user is doing ABC, we expect this data to come true, but it's not happening. And this is the impact. I think especially for upper management, it's also always important to communicate the impact. And even for us, it's always important to understand the impact. When I think about big data, I also think big data do not have to be always perfect. It depends on the use cases. A certain degree of uncertainty is always acceptable. If we still can gain insights, use it for reporting, can rely on the data. So I'm always trying to estimate, even sometimes in certain ways, okay, the impact is very big, medium, or low. And if low, we can even still decide to leave the issue as it is.
Yeah, and a lot of this, what you're discussing in this question, they're all soft skills. They're not technical skills, and I think that's sometimes something that people forget when they go into tech, especially things like data. It's going to sound very technical and quite intimidating to some people, but a lot of what you do is actually communicating with different teams, people that don't work in your world all the time, and I think it's almost people forget how important those skills are in tech, and that you couldn't do your job without those soft skills.
Yeah, especially when you work in data and need to communicate through data, you need to design a story around it. And then maybe even sometimes even I have the story in my head and then I look at the data where I can back up the story. Because then the story becomes my hypothesis, which makes it easier. But I really like it. So it's something I learned during my PhD, because also their communication is very important when you present at a conference. Because even if you're in a big room full of data experts, you cannot explain a 10 pages paper in 10 minutes in every detail. So you need to also work again abstract, and who's interested can then go and read the paper.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny you said that. Spoke to a lady only last week who said her PhD taught her something similar, and she said it wasn't just the content of the PhD, but she said it gave me such confidence with presenting and just it was, she said it was so different having to communicate and go through the training and the presentations and what you have to do in a PhD. And she said if I took nothing else from it, that really just improved my confidence and set her up for her next role. So it's funny you just said that there. You kind of took that from your presentations when you went into work.
Yeah, even the writing, as I said, natural languages are not my strength. My PhD PhD advisor also had to struggle a lot with me, but I learned to write better in short sentences, communicate clearly. Now AI is helping here as well. But the PhD was really, from the soft skills side, also very valuable.
Yeah. And you have a lot of experience across different industries and different roles. What trends or advancements in data engineering are you most excited about? It's a very fast-paced world in tech, especially in data engineering. And is there any advice that you would give to aspiring data professionals?
Yeah, I think so. AI is still rising, and I'm really excited about it because it will help our life a lot.
Yes.
Especially when I think about all the so I really hope, and we haven't established it yet. We are prototyping and experimenting with different tools, but it would really nice if when you think about data literacy, we still have the problem that non-SQL people cannot query data easily. They can look at dashboards as soon as they want to dive deeper. You cannot set up a dashboard for each all the questions they have. So for now, usually analysts have to go and write the query. Then the next question comes up, next query. And it's very time consuming, and having this solved through AI would actually enable analysts to do their job that they
Yeah.
want to do and supposed to do, and also help everyone who has questions to get them answered way easier. So that's my big hope for AI.
Yes.
And
You don't think
also,
it's taking the jobs of people. There's always that fear where something new comes in and they go, it's going to take all of our jobs.
I know.
Everybody that works in something though, they go, no, it's just saving us time so we can do other things that we've always wanted to do.
It's like industrialization long time ago was the same, the fear, but it's always we develop things to be faster and more efficient to do other things.
Yes.
And maybe it's some jobs as an industrialization will drop, but then yeah, you need to find a different opportunity and see what else can you then do with this new world.
Yeah.
And so far in data, there's always way more work than we can ever achieve. And I hope this will balance it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It's even the small things that have come in so far have made such a difference to everybody's day to day,
Yeah.
and it can only keep growing. I can only imagine what that's going to mean for people that work in data. Is there any advice you would give to people that want to go into data, or anything that you wish that somebody had told you before you entered that world?
Yeah, if someone is really into it, it depends on whether it is someone already having experience or like fresh from school. Let's say fresh from school, if you're really interested into data and really want to do it, I would actually now pick a university or study that fits exactly this field. Because I learned everything about computer science. Now I'm maybe using 20% of it, but I'm missing all the math. So I would search for something that has computer science and math in it. So especially the statistic that's tailored to do this. And I know it was not possible back then, but it's now.
Ah, that's so interesting and a lot of people say that what you study sometimes is not what you actually end up doing when you land in a role, and you almost wish somebody had helped you. It's difficult in tech because obviously things move so fast, and trying to align what you're studying, by the time you graduated, everything's changed again and you go into your first role.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are right sometimes.
Which is also okay because at university you learn to learn. That's my attitude. You learn how to approach new things and how to adapt and deal with it. So I learned kind of math after I studied computer science when I came into data. But it would have made my life way easier if I had learned it earlier.
Yes, yes, I love that. You learn to learn because you don't stop learning in the tech industry, and it isn't for everybody, and that's the thing. You have to, everything moves so fast, and people like yourselves obviously find it exciting that things move that fast and you can keep learning. But it doesn't suit everybody. But yeah, I love that. You just learn
Yeah.
to learn. Well, we are already out of time. So Janette, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences of working in data and working at SoundCloud. It's been an absolute pleasure to pick your brains about data. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
And for everybody listening, as always, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.